Imagine a man chosen by God, anointed as a king, blessed with favor and promise. But instead of walking in that promise, he allows fear, jealousy, and disobedience to take control, leading to a tragic end. Today, we're diving into the story of Saul, Israel's first king, who began with so much potential but met a heartbreaking downfall. Through his story, we'll uncover timeless lessons about obedience, faith, and the dangers of pride. Let's explore together what happened to King Saul, from his rise to power to his tragic fall. Please like and subscribe. Saul's story begins at a critical moment in Israel's history. The people of Israel had been led by judges for generations. Yet, in their longing to be like other nations, they demanded a king. They wanted someone they could see, someone to lead them in battles, and someone who would symbolize strength and unity for the nation. But Israel's request saddened Samuel, the prophet and judge, who knew that God alone was their true king. God, however, decided to give them what they wanted, though it came with a warning. He told Samuel that a king would take their sons for war, their daughters for service, and their resources for the kingdom. Despite this warning, the people insisted, and God instructed Samuel to anoint a man chosen by him. This man was Saul, a young man from the tribe of Benjamin. Saul was from a family of some wealth, but he was humble in his own eyes. He was taller than any of the other men in Israel and, by outward appearance, seemed to have the qualities people desired in a king. In 1 Samuel 9, we see how God orchestrated events to lead Saul to Samuel. Saul was out searching for his father's lost donkeys when he encountered the prophet. When Saul met Samuel, he was unaware of his destiny. But Samuel, already told by God that Saul was the chosen one, anointed him privately as king. Samuel poured oil on Saul's head and told him that he was to be the ruler over God's inheritance, the people of Israel. Saul began his reign well. In fact, in 1 Samuel 11, we see Saul rallying the people to rescue the city of Jabesh-Gilead from the Ammonites. This act of bravery and leadership solidified Saul's position as king in the eyes of the people. He proved himself capable, a leader willing to fight for his people. But it wasn't long before Saul faced his first test of obedience. In 1 Samuel 13, Israel was preparing for battle against the Philistines, a constant threat. The Philistines gathered with a massive force, and Saul's troops began to panic. Samuel had instructed Saul to wait 7 days for him to arrive and offer sacrifices before the battle. However, as the 7 days passed, Saul grew anxious as his men began to scatter. Unable to wait any longer, Saul took matters into his own hands. He offered the sacrifice himself, directly disobeying Samuel's instructions. The moment he finished, Samuel arrived and confronted him. Samuel's words were direct. Because of Saul's disobedience, his kingdom would not endure. God had already sought a man after his own heart to lead his people. This was the beginning of Saul's downfall. Despite his early promise, Saul's impatience and pride set him on a path of defiance. He seemed more concerned with appearances than obedience. He was chosen to be king, yet he didn't fully trust God's timing or his plan. In 1 Samuel 15, Saul faces a command from God that would define his reign. Through Samuel, God instructed Saul to completely destroy the Amalekites, a people who had opposed Israel since their journey from Egypt. God's command was clear: Saul was to leave nothing behind, no people, livestock, or possessions. Saul led his army to victory but chose to keep the best of the livestock and spared Agag, the Amalekite king. When Samuel confronted him, Saul justified his actions, claiming that the animals were saved to sacrifice to God. But Samuel's response was one of the most powerful rebukes in Scripture: to obey is better than sacrifice. Samuel's words pierced the heart of the issue. Saul's disobedience was rooted in pride and fear of people's opinions. He wanted to please the people and appear generous, yet he directly defied God's command. At this point, Samuel declared that God had rejected Saul as king. With God's favor withdrawn, Saul's rule became increasingly troubled. Meanwhile, God had chosen a new king, a shepherd boy named David. David's rise began with the famous confrontation with Goliath, the giant Philistine warrior. Saul was initially pleased with David's victory, but as David's popularity grew, Saul became consumed with jealousy. In 1 Samuel 18, we read how Saul's jealousy turned to hatred. He saw David as a threat to his throne and made multiple attempts to kill him. David, however, continued to serve Saul faithfully, even when his life was at risk. Saul's jealousy became an obsession, and he pursued David relentlessly, forcing him into hiding. Saul's jealousy and hatred grew to the point where he even slaughtered the priests of Nob because they had unknowingly aided David. Saul's actions showed a man who had lost all sense of justice and righteousness. He was no longer the king chosen by God but a man overtaken by fear and hatred. As Saul's life spiraled downward, the Philistines gathered once more to fight Israel. Saul, terrified and feeling abandoned, sought guidance. But God was silent. He did not answer Saul through dreams, prophets, or the sacred lots. Desperate, Saul did the unthinkable. He sought out a medium in Endor to summon the spirit of Samuel, despite God's clear commandments against such practices. In a chilling moment, the spirit of Samuel appeared and told Saul of his impending doom. Samuel informed Saul that God had rejected him and that he and his sons would die in battle the following day. Saul was devastated, realizing that he had sealed his own fate through his disobedience and pride. The next day, as the Philistines advanced, Israel's army was overwhelmed. Saul watched as his sons were killed in battle. Seeing defeat was inevitable, Saul chose to fall on his own sword rather than be captured by the Philistines. His armor-bearer, loyal to the end, did the same. In this tragic end, Israel's first king died, a man who began with such potential yet fell so tragically. Lessons to learn from Saul's life. Saul's life teaches us powerful lessons about obedience, pride, and the consequences of disobedience. His story shows the importance of trusting God fully, even when we don't understand his timing. Saul's downfall came not because he lacked ability or strength, but because he allowed pride, fear, and jealousy to control him. His life is a warning that even those chosen by God can fall if they stray from his guidance. Let us remember that God desires our obedience and humility. Saul's story calls us to examine our own lives and our relationship with God. Are we walking in faith and obedience, or are we allowing pride and fear to guide our steps? The story of Saul, tragic as it may be, is a reminder that we can learn and grow closer to God by choosing his way over our own. Thank you for watching. Please like, share and subscribe.